This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 418.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash, 404 error, page not found, links aren't working, system is crashing, system is crashing, system is crashing.
Your old HTML website, barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website, better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster. Why, hello everybody, this is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events, we have none. So sad. No WordCamps to talk about. But I did want to mention that someone asked me, a couple people on Twitter this last week and a half or so, pinged my name asking if there's going to be one in Raleigh for 2022. I don't know the answer to that. I was scheduled to be the lead for 2020 prior to COVID. We canceled it, of course, and don't know what's happening with that at the moment. I need to reach out to the organizing team. I need to reach out to Central to see if that's a possibility this year, and etc. I'm not sure. So no answer there yet. All right, moving on. Segment 1 in the news. Two things here. WordPress 5.9.1 maintenance release was released. This release has 82 bug fixes, both core and block editor. It's a very short cycle maintenance release, with the next major release still being 6.0. I'm not quite sure the date on that. I know it's this year, but I don't know when it is. Later sometime this year. Probably Q3, I'm guessing. All right. Also in the news, Strattic acquired WP2 Static plugin. It's a plugin that helps, that service in the plugin helps WordPress become static sites, which is makes load times faster. You know, of course, there's pros and cons to that. Not being slow is not a con. Anyway, as well as security as well. No database per se. So that's an acquisition. Another one already this year. So there's that. And I think that is it in the news. Yeah, that's it in the news. All right, moving on. Segment 2, the meat and potatoes of this week's episode. This week, I'm talking about the current state of updating your website. Now, I know I've talked about this in the past. Different ways you can update a WordPress website. But it's time to revisit this because the landscape has changed. Things have evolved. Hosting companies have changed. So when I say updates, there are a couple different ways to look at this from updates. We can talk about WordPress core, WordPress plugins, themes, general content, and new functionality. So going from the easiest to the less easy, starting with basic content. If it's a simple blog post, easy to do, not much to think about, no real concerns on making this happen because that's what WordPress is. You know, you want to add a blog post, create a new post, add the content, add an image, and publish. You're done. Of course, there could be a different type of content that's more static based if it's on a page, about, contact, that type of thing. And it could also be the content based on the theme that's in the theme, like on the front end or Beaver Builder. You know, you could have content that's changed within the theme setting itself, within the module. So all that relatively simple, for the most part. Nothing super scary there. Now, on the other updates of core and themes and plugins, it's always a bit sketchy. People are, there's a stress sometimes to click update WordPress core or even the plugins or the theme because you want to make sure that you're not going to break something. So what we recommend for the agency side of things in my life is to wait. When there's a new version of core, when there's a new theme update, when there is, plugin updates, if you're running e-commerce or membership, you kind of want to wait a day or two because you want to make sure nothing's going to break because you want to test, right? So number 1, wait a few days. Number 2, test. And number 3, have a backup in place. We always say this, always have the backup in place. Have a service, some way you can always unroll what you did. You can roll back, okay? So this leads us to the options of how to test, because you don't want to do core functionality updates in a, quote, cowboy coding, end quote, method, meaning you don't want to do that on a live site. You want to test these things. So this is where things have changed in the landscape. So a few options are not the old way, but an option 1 is local development. This is where you're going to use a tool like Desktop Server or Local by Flywheel or a Docker container, and you're going to do the updates locally on your computer. You're going to test the things, you're going to then deploy from there to the live environment, or you're going to redo the actions you did on the live site, but you've tested it so you know it works. Nothing's going to go haywire, if you will. Option 2 is staging servers from a hosting company. Now, many hosts have made the ability to have a staging server much more accessible and easier to set up. You click a button, it makes a copy of your site. You now have a place you can go test and then deploy it. And I like this option a lot because it's easier to share the environment, allowing multiple sets of eyes for the review and for testing. So, you can have a core functionality update there, and then have someone else do the QA to make sure it's working. You can have someone check just different things versus having it only in local development. So you have the pro of that aspect of it. Okay, and then option 3, you could use Git. Now this would be much more for developer-centric type of work. It's all about the code, pull, push, request, fork, merge. Yes, I know all the words. That being said, I've yet to start my official learning and sharing project over at Gidiot.com. Sign up over there. And this year, I'm going to learn Git. So that's going to happen. Yes. All right. So I recommend picking the solution on which makes you the most comfortable for your overall needs. You don't want to use Git if you don't know Git. You don't want to use a local development server if you're not comfortable doing that, set that up. Not that it's hard by any stretch, running desktop server, running local by Flywheel, not difficult at all. Docker, a little bit more difficult to set up, but that's fine. But if you have the hosting company has an ability to do staging servers, that might be the way to go for you. It just depends on what you're comfortable needing. Okay. A few other things to consider here, though, is the type of site you're updating. Standard content versus, let's say, e-commerce. So if it's e-commerce, we'll get to that in a second. So we have a few sites, churches that we manage. Nothing special from a sales standpoint, but we know that they have a lot of content that gets updated at a minimum twice a week. If there's any projects that they have us do that require new functionality, a custom post type, membership, restrict content pro, certain things, we need to be cognizant of that. We tell the client to make no new changes from this certain date and time until we're done. So kind of have to work through that on their calendar as well, schedule-wise. On the e-commerce front, we also recommend 2 options for sites that we manage for that. The site, option 1 is the site needs to go to a maintenance mode while the updates are being done. Simple, that's what Apple does. If Apple can do it and take the store down for an hour, so be it. So can your small little e-commerce site, in my opinion. Otherwise, if they don't want to take the site down, then the updates need to be done during off hours or low bandwidth if you kind of know when your low traffic is happening. Because you don't want to mess up sales because the database can go sideways real quick. So lastly on this topic, something kind of new since I've talked about this many years ago is the service in a tool called visual regression testing. It's where a plugin or a service can look at the site and see if an update is going to change the site visually on the front end to pass a certain percentage before it's done. And it can alert you like, hey, if we do this, this is going to be off. It's going to mess up your CSS. It's going to mess up your layouts, whatever it may be. That's called visual regression testing. So a lot of companies offer that service now as well. So something to think about and consider. And I'm curious, how are you updating? If you want to share your story, by all means, let me know. Shoot me an email. You know how to reach me. So that's kind of the state of where things are as far as updating. There's always, that concern of like, how do I do this? What's the best practice here? And it's just a matter of number 1 rule in my mind, have a backup in place. Number 1. Okay, so there's that. All right, moving on. Segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip is a webinar from Beth Hannon. She spoke recently about cool and complex things you can do with forms. And I will link to that in the show notes. It's over at crowdcast.io. It's free. And it was presented by GoWP, friends of mine over there as well. So check it out. I think you'll enjoy it a lot if you're looking to do some cool things and complex things with forms. All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email. I am adam@KitchensinkWP.com or use the SpeakPipe function on the website. If you want to support the show, become a Patreon. I would love that. You want to sponsor the show, you can do that too. There's a form on the website. Thanks for listening. Now go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. All right, see you next week. Bye-bye.